horrible criminal and mentally unstable man. And Duty to Warn was a book that came out when he was first in office. Psychiatrists across the country who don't ever really diagnose people that they don't serve personally came together and made a book, Duty to Warn, to tell the world what a narcissistic, mentally ill person he is. And I think he's the worst thing that ever happened to the United States. And his cruelty...
All right, folks, get comfortable and grab your favorite snack. It's time to dive into a political moment that's as sharp as a fresh cup of coffee on a Monday morning. Late-night host John Oliver just unleashed a critique of Ron DeSantis that was as biting as ever. A deep dive into the Florida governor's political missteps, policy blunders, and the persona that sparked both admiration and controversy across the nation.
What's going on, mainstream media? You're not doing your job. And you haven't since he came down that escalator. You haven't been doing your job. If you would have told the truth about him from the beginning and stood up to the lies that Mark Burnett sold America on The Apprentice, we wouldn't be in this position. But you equated, you normalized Trump, and that's what Time Magazine did. Man of the Year, Donald Trump. Well, you, Time Magazine. You, seriously.
Oliver didn't hold back as he laid into DeSantis, calling him a cold and calculated politician with a robotic charm that makes even the stiffest politicians seem charismatic. It wasn't just a rant, it was a masterclass in political satire. You know how, back in the day, when new political figures emerged, there was always that one voice of reason cutting through the noise. Oliver played that role to perfection, blending humor with hard-hitting analysis that made it impossible to ignore.
Where were you when, in the 2016 primaries, Trump starts insulting you? Did you see that live, or did someone tell you Trump's talking about you right now?
I was watching it live.
You were watching it live.
And my kids were in the room with me. And they said, Mom, what, did he just say you? I go, yes, he did. And he's not only insulting me, he's insulting any woman that he doesn't think lives up to his standards of what a woman is. And that's the kind of person that this man is, and why he's a danger to...
For those who remember when politics had a bit more personality, or at least less reliance on scripted talking points, Oliver's monologue felt like a much-needed jolt. He took aim at everything from DeSantis's ongoing battles with Disney to his awkward social interactions that have been memed into oblivion. And while many argue that modern politics is a theater production in disguise, Oliver's take reminded us that some actors just don't have the range for the role they're playing. In true Oliver fashion, he didn't just poke fun at DeSantis's policies, he dissected them with the precision of a seasoned satirist. When he pointed out the governor's obsession with anti-woke policies while ignoring pressing state issues, it wasn't just a joke.
Like the Rosie O'Donnell debate. I like debating when you have a crowd. Remember the Rosie O'Donnell?
Yeah, it was very funny.
Megan, crazy thing, Megan. That was a hell of a question, man. If I didn't come up with that answer,
it was a great line.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
And when I said that, the place went crazy. And she kept talking. No, she had like 10 of the...
Yeah, well, Megan said you said it to other people and you admitted you did. But it was...
It was a scathing indictment of priorities gone awry. His words painted a picture of a leader whose ambitions outpace his ability to connect with voters, leaving even some of his supporters scratching their heads. Of course, DeSantis wasn't about to let this slide. Almost instantly, his team fired back with the kind of canned response that's become standard in political warfare. You might remember when politicians had a sense of humor about late-night jokes, but here it felt like every remark was met with an overly defensive press release. Instead of laughing it off, his response only amplified the criticism, turning Oliver's jokes into headlines that spread faster than a campaign promise during election season.
Are you watching this moron speak? Can he form a coherent sentence? He is the worst thing that ever happened. Period.
And he's just babbling like an incoherent asshole. He's like Dr. Doom. He's the worst thing. Oh, you know what? He just lies, lies, lies. I am done with Donald.
For those who've followed politics for years, this felt like déjà vu, a familiar cycle of criticism, overreaction, and viral media moments. Oliver's takedown wasn't an isolated event. It was another episode in the ongoing reality show that modern politics has become. It's easy to recall a time when debates were about ideas rather than internet virality. But in today's landscape, every soundbite becomes part of the endless feedback loop. And in that sense, Oliver's words weren't just sharp. They were a necessary reminder of how politics has evolved into a spectacle of its own.
I watched him yesterday. He couldn't put two sentences together. And it's not an age thing, it's a competence thing. He can't talk. And of course, he has to debate, I guess. I hope he's going to debate. I'm going to debate. You know, I don't want to debate people that I'm 60 points up on, because what's the purpose in doing that?
Does that mean no presidential primary debates for you?
Well, I don't see it. Look.
None? How about do the one just before Iowa? Do it, I'll moderate it.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. You know, like you did with the Rosie O'Donnell.
Would it be a deal breaker for you?
Look,
Would it?
Look,
Would it?
The people want a smart president. Ronald Reagan didn't do it. Nixon didn't do it. Nobody does it. I mean, like you asked me a question when you were moderating the debate for Fox, that frankly, if I didn't come up with the answer only Rosie O'Donnell, I would have had a problem with that. That was a...
And evolve it did. Social media, that great equalizer, turned Oliver's segment into an instant sensation. Twitter, ever the battleground for hot takes and viral trends, exploded with hashtags like #DeSantis disaster and #Oliver exposes Ron. It wasn't just social media taking notice. Cable news shows and late-night hosts ran with it, further blurring the line between political commentary and entertainment.
Dancing, whatever. And so he held a press conference to announce whether or not she was going to retain her crown. Yeah. And then she started to cry. She did. So I just want to thank Donald who's giving me a second chance. And there he is, hair looping, going, everyone deserves a second chance. And I'm going to give her a second chance. Her hair is perfect for that. Your hair is perfect.
For those who remember when news came from the evening broadcast, rather than Twitter threads, this wasn't just another viral clip. It was a continuation of a long tradition of political satire keeping politicians in check. Oliver's style, equal parts brutal honesty and cutting humor, reminded many of a time when calling out hypocrisy was more than just an online trend. It was an essential part of holding leaders accountable. And while critics might dismiss his analysis as just comedy, his deep dives into policy and governance struck a chord with those paying close attention.
Rosie O'Donnell's disgusting. I mean, both inside and out. You take a look at her, she's a slob. She talks like a truck driver. Rosie attacked me personally because I was very happy when her talk show failed. The other thing that failed, and this was a real monster, and everybody was suing her, was her magazine. Her magazine called Rosie was a total disaster. So I loved it. I gloat over it. I think it's wonderful because I like to see bad people fail. Rosie failed. I'm happy about it.
There's something uniquely satisfying about watching a high-profile political figure squirm under the weight of their own contradictions. DeSantis's controlled, calculated image, carefully crafted over years, seemed to falter in real time as Oliver's segment gained traction. It's as if every attempt to downplay the criticism only reinforced the perception that he struggles when the spotlight isn't entirely in his favor.
You've written about that famous question and exchange that he and I had at that August 6th, 2015, very first GOP presidential debate. It was 8 years ago now. The whole nation was watching. It was the first. It was exciting. And he and I sparred over, what was definitely a tough question about things he'd said about women. And he interrupted it with only Rosie O'Donnell. And the crowd laughed. And you analyzed that in a way that made so much sense. Can you do that here?
First of all, I'm just realizing how much you changed my life with that question, because the entire direction of my life changed in that moment. When he said the Rosie O'Donnell line, I actually stood up and walked toward the TV, and I said, I don't know what's happening here, but this is...
Oliver's words landed not just because they were funny, but because they exposed the cracks in a carefully curated public persona. Remember when political debates were less about winning news cycles and more about discussing real issues? Oliver's segment was a reminder of what happens when someone dares to cut through the noise. His jokes, laced with a sharp wit and an undercurrent of real concern, appealed to those tired of the repetitive spin and empty rhetoric.
Like, what has it been like for you having the President of the United States criticize your physical appearance?
Well, not only my physical appearance, everything. My sexuality, my parenting, my wife. Like, he went really batshit crazy.
What is it about you that drew this out of him?
Well, that I told the truth about him at a time when everyone was afraid. But then I did the really offensive thing to him. I told the truth that he was bankrupt 4 times.
That's what did it.
He's not a self-made man, that he got his daddy's money, and that he also notoriously ripped off all these private contractors, family businesses all over Atlantic City went under because of his unethical ways. So I told the truth about him 10 years ago at a time when anyone could have found out those truths about him. But the media decided not to print it while he was running, not to talk about the fact that there was no equivalence between him and Hillary Clinton. They acted like he was a legitimate candidate. So I feel like mainstream media is really responsible.
Instead of another choreographed media appearance, he delivered raw, unfiltered critique, the kind that leaves a mark. And let's not overlook the generational factor. For the older crowd who've seen it all, from the Nixon years to the endless cycle of modern scandals, watching Oliver go after DeSantis was like watching history repeat itself in fast forward. It's a reminder that while the names and faces may change, the political game remains as ruthless and unpredictable as ever.
That's interesting. How come we never heard from the hospital or the doctors? How come we never heard from anyone but his fake doctor, whose name he doesn't recall? I'm really flabbergasted at how much he gets away with. I really am. Don't let him get away with anything else, people. And come on, one of you young, hungry journalists, young, you know? Somebody in your 20s, just out of college. Do a big piece on this. Make it a whole YouTube story. Do it. People will watch it because, you know, we need some answers.
In an era where loyalty is fleeting and narratives shift at lightning speed, seeing a comedian call out hypocrisy with such precision was a breath of fresh air. It's also worth noting that beneath Oliver's humor was a genuine concern for the direction of American politics. His monologue wasn't just about laughs, it was a warning wrapped in satire. He reminded viewers that governance isn't about culture wars and sound bites, it's about real leadership. And in doing so, he tapped into a growing frustration among voters who are tired of the distractions and eager for meaningful change. For those who've been watching the political arena for decades, this wasn't just another late-night monologue, it was a reflection of collective frustrations. We've seen administrations rise and fall, promises made and broken, and trust in leadership erode over time. Oliver's critique resonated not just because it was funny, but because it echoed the exhaustion of a public that has heard it all before. And while his words may have been dripping with sarcasm, they also carried a truth that's hard to ignore. So, as you settle into your favorite chair, perhaps with a fresh cup of coffee or a drink of choice, take a moment to appreciate the moment. John Oliver's takedown of Ron DeSantis isn't just another trending clip. It's a testament to the power of political satire and the necessity of calling out the absurdity when we see it. In these unpredictable political times, where the news cycle shifts by the minute, Oliver's no-nonsense approach serves as both a reflection and a relief. It's a reflection of the bizarre state of modern governance and a relief for those who find solace in humor amid the chaos. His words remind us that while the political landscape may be ever-changing, there's always room for a well-placed joke. And sometimes, a comedic roast is exactly what's needed. So here's to the political watchers who've seen it all, who understand that in the ever-spinning wheel of American politics, satire remains a powerful tool. Oliver's latest critique is more than just a comedic moment. It's a reminder that while times may change, sharp wit and unfiltered truth will always have a place in the conversation. Stay tuned, keep your remotes ready, and remember, in the grand circus of modern politics, sometimes the best way to process it all is to sit back, laugh, and let Oliver do the talking.